Shedeur Sanders didn't just turn down a $2 million endorsement deal. He set fire to the blueprint. And in doing so, he forced every sports exec, marketing VP, endorsement manager, and old-school agent to do something they hate doing: start over. Because this wasn't just a no. It wasn't a maybe later. It was a hard pass, a line drawn in bold, unmissable ink, and the message behind it was crystal clear. I know my worth. And your numbers are outdated.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Let's be real. The sports world isn't used to seeing this kind of move. A fifth-round rookie? Turning down money most veterans would fight for? With no regular season snap, no Super Bowl ring, no primetime highlight reel? That's supposed to be career suicide. But not when your name is Shedeur Sanders. Not when your brand is already outperforming the league's marketing machine. Not when your logo crashes Nike servers, your fanbase treats hoodies like collectibles, and your Instagram posts reach more people than the NFL's Thursday night promos. And here's the kicker: Shedeur didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He didn't counter. He just walked away from a bag that most rookies would have grabbed with both hands, kissed, and posted about with 3 fire emojis and a thank you tag. Because he's not playing the old game. He's building something else entirely. And now, the NFL business world is spinning. Because for decades, these endorsement deals were formulaic. They were fixed price tags on players, scaled by draft pick, position, and projected screen time. It was all very neat. Very predictable. But Shedeur just shattered that formula. He didn't just say no to the offer, he said no to the entire valuation model. He rejected the very idea that his worth could be decided by a spreadsheet built in a boardroom. And that's why this hits so hard. Because what he did wasn't just bold, it was deliberate. His team didn't wake up one morning and say, let's make a statement. They studied. They calculated. They gathered the data, the engagement metrics, the cross-platform analytics. They built a case, not for why Shedeur deserves more, but for why the industry is behind. And then, they let the numbers speak. That $2 million offer? It wasn't generous. It wasn't an opportunity. It was a test, a measurement of how much the industry still believes it can control the narrative. Shedeur didn't just pass the test. He changed the curriculum. Now here's where it gets even wilder. This wasn't even about the money. It was about the model, the old-world logic that says rookies earn their voice through silence. That says fame must be deferred until production justifies it. That says your first few years in the league are for smiling politely, saying yes to everything, and proving you belong before you speak too loudly. Shedeur just laughed at that idea. Because what he's proving now is something the sports world has been trying to ignore for too long. Athletes aren't just walking billboards anymore. They're platforms. Shedeur's rejection wasn't about disrespecting a brand. It was about reclaiming autonomy. It was about saying, if you want to align with this movement, you don't get to offer table scraps. You don't get to test the waters. You come correct, or don't come at all. And that message? It landed. It landed in boardrooms, in marketing departments, in social media agencies that suddenly realized, wait, we're not in charge anymore. Because now the athletes are negotiating from the top of the mountain, not the bottom of the ladder. And Shedeur? He's not alone. He's just the first one to say the quiet part loud. What comes next is the ripple effect. Already, young players, in college, in high school, are watching this unfold. They're seeing Shedeur say no to $2 million and realizing, maybe I don't have to take whatever I'm given. Maybe I can build first and negotiate second. And the industry? They're scrambling. Because it's not just that Shedeur turned down a deal. It's that his brand, his actual value, may be worth 5x that offer. 10x. Not based on jersey sales. Not based on how many touchdowns he throws in his rookie year. But based on cultural influence. On reach. On emotional connection with an audience that doesn't care who's on the Madden cover. They care who's real. And Shedeur is nothing if not real. That's the edge. That's the terrifying part for the old guard. Because you can't fake what he's built. You can't replicate it in a lab. You can't reverse engineer charisma, digital fluency, Gen Z language, and legacy confidence. You either have it, or you don't. And Shedeur has it in spades. Now let's talk about timing. Because this move wasn't accidental. It was surgical. Shedeur didn't announce this during the off-season dead zone. He let it break during peak NFL preseason frenzy. When all eyes were already on rosters, depth charts, and potential breakout stars. He knew the cameras were rolling. He wanted the cameras rolling. Because this wasn't just a business decision. It was a message to the entire league. To his peers. To the brands watching from the sidelines, waiting to lowball. To the execs who still think athlete marketing begins and ends with a post-game quote. He said, "I am not your typical rookie. And I will not be treated like one." And now that he's drawn that line in the sand, there's no going back. If you're a brand right now and you want to be in business with Shedeur Sanders, you better bring more than a contract and a commercial spot. You better bring vision, respect, equity. Because Shedeur's not looking to be featured in someone else's campaign. He's building his own. And that's the future. Not just for him, but for every athlete watching this moment unfold. This is the inflection point. The place where athletes stop waiting for offers and start creating opportunities. Where the power dynamic flips, and the question changes from, "What's the deal?" to, "What are you bringing to my table?" Shedeur didn't burn a bridge. He built a new road. And now the rest of the industry has to figure out how to catch up. Because here's the truth they're waking up to. That $2 million offer? It wasn't just undervaluing Shedeur. It was exposing the gap between what athletes are really worth and what the system still thinks they can get away with paying. And if you think he's the last one to say no, just wait. Shedeur lit the fuse. Now the explosion's coming. A whole new era of athlete entrepreneurs is about to rise. Sharper, savvier, and a whole lot less patient with business as usual. So if you're still asking why Shedeur Sanders said no to $2 million, you're not paying attention. He didn't just say no. He said, "This is the new price of admission. Welcome to the future." Let's keep going, because this isn't one of those stories that ends with a mic drop. No, this is the kind of moment where the mic drop starts the avalanche. Because when Shedeur Sanders turned down that $2 million offer, he didn't just make headlines. He made history. And now the sports world, every executive, agent, brand rep, and front office intern, is scrambling not just to react, but to relearn how the game is played. See, you have to understand something. This wasn't a spoiled athlete saying nah to some free money. This was a strategic flex. This was chess, not checkers. This was a young man who understands that when you already own the spotlight, you don't need to rent anyone else's shine. That $2 million? It came with strings. Fine print. Expectations. Creative control. A subtle tone of, "We're giving you your big break." And Shedeur? He already has the big break. He's not waiting for a break. He is the break. He's the moment. The conversation. The trending topic every time he breathes near a camera. And you can feel it in the air, the discomfort, the corporate confusion, the quiet panic behind those brand marketing emails that now read, "Urgent meeting, Shedeur valuation model, need input ASAP." Because what Shedeur exposed, in one clean, calculated move, is the uncomfortable truth the industry doesn't want to talk about. They've been lowballing influence for decades. They've been valuing athletes based on field stats alone, refusing to acknowledge the cultural capital they bring to the table. But now, the metrics are public. The engagement is visible. The reach is quantifiable. There's no hiding from it anymore. And what happens when you take that power away from the gatekeepers? When players realize they don't have to accept anything, they can build everything. You get what we're witnessing right now, the start of a market rebellion. One player, one decision, a domino effect in the making. And the ripple effects are already showing. Other rookies are suddenly getting bolder in negotiations. Nil athletes still in college are using Shedeur's playbook as a case study. Marketing firms are revising their entire athlete outreach strategies, asking themselves, what does this athlete already own? What platform are we joining? That's the twist. That's the pivot. The leverage is no longer about what you can offer the athlete. It's about what the athlete is willing to let you be part of. And if you think the NFL isn't sweating behind closed doors, think again. Because Shedeur didn't just say no to a brand, he challenged the structure around the brand. He questioned the fundamental economics of how value is distributed in sports. And that's a scary question when your billion-dollar ecosystem depends on keeping those valuations in check. Let's put this into perspective. Shedeur Sanders is a rookie, 5th-round draft pick. QB3. Not a starter. Not a Pro Bowler. Not a Heisman winner. But his market value? Through the roof. Not because of his stats, but because of his status. He understands the moment he's in. He understands the culture he speaks to. He understands that when he says, no, it echoes. And echo it did. Now every brand approaching an athlete in 2025 has to ask itself, is this deal competitive, or is it insulting? Because thanks to Shedeur, the floor has been raised. The bar is higher. The script has changed. You can't offer pennies to a player who owns the room the second he enters it. And if you think this is about ego, it's not. This is about equity. This is about athletes no longer being just the face of a campaign. They want to be partners, stakeholders, owners. Shedeur didn't reject that deal because he wanted to be difficult. He rejected it because it was too small for the vision he's building. He doesn't just want to promote a brand. He wants to create one, shape one, scale one. He's not chasing sponsorships. He's building infrastructure, real estate, ownership models, licensing agreements, global outreach. This is bigger than endorsement. This is empire. And you know who sees it? The younger generation. The 16-year-old quarterback already building a YouTube channel. The 19-year-old cornerback looking into trademarking his initials. The 14-year-old wide receiver getting DM'd by clothing lines before he's played varsity. They're watching Shedeur not as a player, but as a blueprint. They're realizing that the old advice, shut up, stay humble, sign the contract, might not be the move anymore. That maybe you don't have to wait until year 5 to speak. That maybe you don't need a Super Bowl ring to be valuable. That maybe the moment you step into the league, you can own your moment. And that's what this all comes down to. Ownership. Not just financial. Not just contractual. But spiritual. Mental. Narrative. Shedeur owns his name. His story. His image. And he refuses to rent it out for a discount. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. That's being so aware of your power, so aligned with your worth, that you can walk away from 7 figures because you know 8, 9, and 10 are waiting on your terms. And now? The pressure is on the industry. They can't unhear that, no. They can't unsee the wave coming behind him. Because this wasn't just about Shedeur. This was a test balloon for the entire future of athlete empowerment. The brands that adapt will survive. They'll rethink their deals, their structures, their value propositions. They'll realize that you don't own an athlete's brand, you collaborate with it. The ones who refuse? They'll be left pitching to players who aren't listening, trying to buy into cultures that already moved on. And here's the part that's really got execs biting their nails. Shedeur hasn't even hit his prime yet. He hasn't started an NFL game. He hasn't thrown a single touchdown on Sunday Night Football. And he's already redefining how athletes get paid? So imagine what happens when he does start. When he does dominate. When he takes the field, wins games, and backs up every headline with performance. Then what? You think he's negotiating for brand partnerships? He'll be writing the deals himself, owning product lines, launching apps, signing athletes under his own banner, running media companies, creating his own sports network. This isn't a theory. This is where we're headed. And Shedeur Sanders didn't just see the future. He stepped into it early. And now, everyone else is racing to catch up. So to every young athlete watching this unfold, take notes. Not just on the highlight reels, but on the choices, the strategy, the vision. Because the path Shedeur just opened, it's not about chasing clout or cash. It's about recognizing when the world's trying to underprice you and having the courage to walk away. It's about knowing that sometimes the biggest flex isn't saying yes. It's saying, I'll wait because I know what I'm worth. And That changes everything. We're watching a young quarterback, a fifth-round draft pick no less, draw a line in the sand so bold, so unapologetic, it's rewriting the athlete-business relationship in real time. It's not some flashy stunt. It's not some look-at-me moment. It's a measured, intentional power move. And honestly, it's got everyone rattled. Not because Shedeur Sanders is cocky, but because he's correct. This isn't just about turning down $2 million. It's about the why. Why say no to a payday like that when the average NFL career is less than 4 years? When most rookies are taking whatever they can get just to make it through the next training camp. Because Shedeur isn't average. He never planned to be. He's not here to play survival games. He's here to set standards. That $2 million wasn't just a check. It was a valuation. A quiet whisper from the industry that said, "This is what you're worth to us." And Shedeur answered back with silence. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And let's be honest, the industry was banking on him taking the deal. Why wouldn't he? Rookie contract. Depth chart politics. Unproven at the NFL level. All the usual levers that make a player feel grateful for anything that hits the table. But Shedeur doesn't come from that mindset. He comes from Dion. From prime time. From a bloodline that's been through the league and seen the game from every angle. He was raised in the film room, not just to study blitz packages, but to study value, where it lives, how it moves, and what it looks like when it's respected. This wasn't a kid getting big-headed. This was a grown businessman saying, "You're not going to buy me for less than what I'm worth." Because let's not pretend this offer existed in a vacuum. This is Shedeur Sanders we're talking about. The same Shedeur whose jersey outsold starters. Whose logo broke online storefronts. Whose social presence eclipses that of half the league's roster, combined. He's got cultural capital before he's thrown a single NFL touchdown. That's not hype. That's leverage. And the NFL, and the brands that orbit it, don't quite know what to do with that. They've always held the pen. They've always written the script. But Shedeur? He walked in with his own script and made it non-negotiable. What happens next is the real story. Because now the balance has shifted. The precedent is set. If Shedeur's turning down $2 million, then what's the real price tag for athletes with his reach? His relevance? His resonance? You think future rookies aren't paying attention? You think wide receivers at Alabama or quarterbacks at USC or running backs out of Georgia aren't already screenshotting this story, bookmarking it, bringing it up in meetings with their marketing reps? Shedeur just gave them a playbook they didn't know they were allowed to use. And the brands? They've got a problem. Because the athlete marketplace just got a lot more expensive. A lot more empowered. A lot more aware of its own gravity. This is no longer about, sign with us and we'll give you exposure. The players are the exposure. And once you flip that switch, there's no flipping it back. That's why the NFL is watching this so closely. Because this wasn't a fumbled bag. This was a rejection of the old economy. One where players waited for deals, accepted crumbs, signed away likeness rights for pennies, and were told to focus on football every time they tried to assert themselves as more than just an asset. That era? What Shedeur Sanders just did was call out the system. Not with his words, but with his refusal. And the silence that followed? Deafening. Because nobody expected a rookie to do this. They didn't think he'd have the guts. They didn't think he'd have the data. But he did. That's the secret sauce, by the way. The data. That's what makes this different from the diva narratives they used to slap on players who dared to be bold. Shedeur didn't say no because he felt like he was worth more. He said no because he knew. Because his team came with numbers. With digital metrics. With case studies, engagement stats, brand lift potential. This wasn't emotional. It was evidence-based. You can't argue with receipts. And when you show up to the negotiation table with a full deck, and the other side slides over a 3-card offer, you're not wrong for walking away. You're smart. And now we're in the aftershock phase. Brand strategists are being told to rethink everything. The standard rookie contract is being reevaluated behind closed doors. There's talk, quiet talk, about whether the league needs to step in, start offering athletes more control over their branding deals before this whole thing explodes. Because if Shedeur can do this without starting a single regular season game, what happens when he starts lighting up Sundays? What happens when he goes viral and throws for 300 yards? When the stats match the clout? Then you've got something the league can't ignore. You've got an athlete who doesn't need the shield to shine. And that's dangerous. Not to the fans. Not to the culture. But to the model. The old model. The one built on dependency. On earning your visibility. On brands using athletes as vessels instead of partners. Shedeur flipped that model on its head. He walked in, didn't like the offer, and left the door open, but only if the terms respect the vision. And make no mistake, there is a vision. You don't make a move like this unless you know exactly where you're headed. That's the thing people miss. They see the no and assume he's being picky, arrogant. They don't realize that this is part of a 10-year plan. A blueprint. A brand architecture that's being built with patience, purpose, and long-term wealth in mind. This isn't about fast money. It's about forever moves. And Shedeur's playing the long game. Because he knows that one solid decision now, no matter how controversial, can set the tone for every deal that comes after. You hold the line once? You never have to lower your price again. That's where he's headed. And now we wait. Not for him to make another move, but for the rest of the industry to figure out how to respond. Because this wasn't just a negotiation gone sideways. This was the first domino. And what's coming next? It's not just a new era. It's a new economy. And Shedeur Sanders? He didn't just walk into the NFL. He walked in with the keys to a kingdom no one knew he already owned.